Good evening, folks. Welcome back to the Tikkun Shavuot here at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. My name is Isaac Zablocki. I'm Director of Film Programs here at the JCC. Thank you for joining us at, what time is it? It's 11:15, yeah, the 11:15 slot. This is a conversation slot. We're going to be showing, we've actually every year show Israeli TV shows here all night long. We've been doing this before Shtisel became the biggest hit on Netflix. I think we even showed here Shtisel one year and like nobody showed up, and now like they're like, Shtisel, you're a god. I'm glad we were here first. We just showed a show called Stockholm, and then in the next slot at 12:30, we're going to be screening the show Autonomies, episode 1, and then episode 2 of Stockholm. And you could stay here all night and just watch new Israeli television and or anything else that's going on here in the building, not to discourage you to try new and other things. But here we're going to be discussing, we're going to actually be talking about this phenomenon a little bit, talking about Israeli television, the history and the renaissance, one would say, that's going on right now. And to make this a little more interesting, we brought here from, as part of our festival, we have two of our guests. We have the actor Yoav Levi here with us. Yoav, please join us. And producer Efrat Cohen, who both had films here at our Israel Film Center Festival, which is going on this week and actually continuing till Wednesday night. And they'll be giving their perspective on Israeli television and everything, and will correct everything I have to say. Why is everybody moving back? We're all moving back. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to start with a little bit of history, and feel free to jump in. It's actually fascinating. I think Israeli television has an impact on and is sometimes one could say a reflection of what's going on in Israeli culture. And Israeli culture, I believe, is what it is today because of a lot of what was going on with actually technical restrictions and cultural developments of Israeli television. I'm going to start, and this is not going to be boring. I'm going to give you like a very brief history. But Israeli television was started. I'm going to grab some water too, if you have an opportunity. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Israeli television started in 1966 in Israel. There was one channel. There was only one channel until the late 80s, technically. There was a second channel got started, but it really didn't kick in until the early 90s. First of all, 1966 is very late for television to start in general. There was television all around the world. Israel was a very different country that had a government that was a little more socialist at the time. Excuse me. And thought that actually that that television would corrupt the youth and would change the hardworking kind of idealist program that was going on in Israeli Zionism. And the government, it was Ben-Gurion himself, pushed hard, no television. That's not something that we're going to bring in and dirty up our new country with. And then, of course, by the way, when it was started in 1966, black and white, and stayed as just, at first it was just educational programming for the first few years without any original programming. And it took about a decade, actually over a decade, till real actual new programming came in. Also, still a requirement of black and white. I was reading about it today that Golda Meir said that if they had it with color, if they had TV with color, it would make things look more artificial. This is her quote. And therefore, shows that were brought in that had color, the color was removed. You had to have on your TV a special invention that only Israelis could come up with, that erased, it was called the mechikon, an eraser, that would erase the colors from the TV shows that were in color. And then people would try to bring in, they actually, of course, found the way to override that. Eventually, they allowed color TV to be shown in Israel, and turns out that was not what was going to corrupt the youth. I connect this always to I think it was the late 60s when the Beatles were going to come to Israel, and the Minister of Education said, absolutely not, we are not going to have those people here. And they lost out on that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that That definitely it was a very different country, and that's what you could see about Israel too. In general, Israel started off with this very idealist core. In the 1990s, really is when everything changed. And I'll say there's even a connection if you look at like when Netanyahu was rising in the government and when Israeli politics started to change too, as far as being a little bit more like what we see here in America and bringing in commercial culture. Israel actually, throughout its industry, started privatizing a lot of its industry. And with that came for the first time, and this causes a huge revolution in Israeli culture, commercial television. Channel 2 in Israel was the first commercial channel in the early 90s, and now television was about making money. This was not about a government-run TV channel, this one channel that they had, the Israeli Broadcasting Authority, that had been the only authority on what people would watch throughout the, I guess, 60s, 70s, 80s. Now in the 90s, there's another channel that's trying to make money, that's looking at ratings, that cares about ratings. And when you have just one channel, you don't really care about ratings. They're going to watch you. And you had access also to like Jordan television if the wind was blowing in the right direction, and access sometimes if you were in the right part of the country to either some like Lebanese television or Egyptian television too sometimes. But also cable came into Israel, and that also, of course, has revolutionized everything, and it really kickstarted what has led up to where we are today, where truly one of Israel's greatest exports is television. Their formats are being used all around the world. And I'll just mention one last level of the revolution that I'm identifying here as far as Israeli television's development. So there was a moment for me, actually, in the 90s. I don't know, did either of you ever see the show Florentine?
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Florentine was, for me, the first original Israeli TV show that was complete. It didn't look. I couldn't compare it to anything in America. It was doing its own thing, and it was a fabulous, beautiful, artistic, and successful show. Only lasted, I think, 2 or 3 seasons. Kind of went downhill by the end, but it was Israel's first real, for me, original. Like, even if you look at the early Israeli TV shows like Krovim, and you could say that this was an Israeli comedy, it was based on the sitcom format that came out of America. This, Florentine, was its own language, as far as I was concerned. This was the 90s, and then into the 2000s, as Israel's film industry started growing in general, Israel started having a lot of film schools, too, that brought birth to just a lot of filmmakers that were out there with new creative ideas. The next level of revolution really was, I'm going to say it started with in-treatment, B'tipul.
That's right.
Which was once again, a very original Israeli TV show. Did not seem like anything else that I had seen before. And original enough that HBO bought the format for it and made an American version of it. The American version of In Treatment, and then Israel really started entering this market of selling its formats for remakes to the rest of the world. By the way, not just we hear of the few that are made here in America. Actually, in Europe, Israeli TV is extremely successful as far as selling formats. It became a whole business for the Israeli networks. The next really big notable one, there were many along the way, was of course Homeland, which I would say is probably the first Israeli TV show to win an Emmy for Best Show, and it was once again I think the American versions are very different than the Israeli versions, but definitely a lot of credit went back to...
Fauda.
Well, so now here comes, this is the next level. Fauda and Shtisel, which are the hits of the last couple of years, this is something completely new, because for the first time, Americans are actually watching Israeli TV shows. Beforehand, they were watching the American versions of an Israeli TV show. Now, and there's a few others, but really, Fauda and Shtisel, the Netflix revolution brought in these shows, and
Which is a good conclusion to this process.
yes. Now it's really come to a point where it's now, with Homeland, Hulu showed the Israeli version of it, and I remember we have here a friend, Adi Ezroni, who's in the Israeli version, and for the first time, she said, she had come to America. In Israel, everybody knows who she is. She came to America, and nobody knew who she was, and then once this went on Hulu, the Israeli version of Homeland, the Chatufim, and then she said for the first time people were recognizing her. There was clearly a buzz. With Netflix, what it's done for Fauda and Shtisel, it's hit a whole new level. These are all shows that actually had aired in Israel already, were already hits, and then suddenly have this new life. I mean, Shtissel's been around for many years. We've been screening it here, and now it's having this new life thanks to Netflix. Of course, we have no numbers because Netflix does not share any of its numbers. We don't know how successful this really is, but based on living on the Upper West Side and being the guy who runs film at the JCC in Manhattan, I could tell you that 100% of the audience is watching Fauda and Shtisel because that's all I hear about. That's all people want to talk about, and it's definitely something that has impacted American TV viewing and has, I think probably more people have seen this than have gone on birthright trips. So
you can add as well comedies like Ramzor. Really different in the view because it's a comedy. It's not sitcom, and it had a big success in I think Russia and the whole former USSR countries, and also documentaries, which quite new, I think.
Tell me about a documentary.
Documentary like Shadow of a Truth, about the murder of Ta'ir Rada, which was a big story. Yes, Tzel Shel Emet in Hebrew. A very huge story in Israel about the fact that there was someone who sit in prison, and the whole public has doubts for the fact that he's the guilty guy.
So it's part of this whole true crime phenomenon that's going on around the world.
More like almost a murderer, because the story is about a murderer, which is by the creators. I'm not taking sides here. According to the creators, did not commit the murder. So it's more like almost a murderer or the Jinx, if you saw that. But it's very successful. Please continue.
And it's having international success too, outside of Israel?
Yes. Yeah. So it's add another level to what you just draw.
Excuse me, Making a Murder, not Almost a Murder. Making a Murder. That's the title.
What are some of the things you're watching in Israel? Let me start the questioning with that. What are the new things? What are things people should be looking out for that you say, oh, if this is something I want to... You're here where you have the American audience here. What's the next thing they should be looking out for? They can't all wait for season 3 of Shtisel. Yes, they're making it. Yes.
I watched Shtisel, of course, in Fauda, that's for sure.
On the Spectrum.
On the Spectrum.
Did you hear about it?
Brilliant series. I think they're doing it.
They are making an American version of it.
They're doing an American version of it. Yeah.
On the Spectrum, we just actually showed the Israeli version of it at our Real Abilities Film Festival. It's about an apartment in Tel Aviv that has 3 people on the autistic spectrum living together and about their lives and families, and it is a fascinating, revolutionary show. But
I want to start from the end. You know what you said about the business today in Israeli TV. The competition in the 90s was to gain as much as viewers as you can, to get as much as rating as you can. And today the competition between the channels is to sell as much as TV series, the ideas at least, to as much companies in the world that you can. That's why you see like first season of Israeli typical TV series. It goes out in, let's say, 2017, and it takes something like 3 or 4 years to make season 2, unlike the US, which they film 2 or 3 seasons, altogether at the same time. And the reason is because they want to see how, if there is a demand to this series abroad, And if they succeed to sell it abroad, they make another season. Because one thing never changed in the Israeli market, in the Israeli TV market, is there is no money. There never been, and there's still no money. So it's very deep. The success of the TV today, second season, third season, depends very much if you succeed to sell it abroad. Because the money that comes in from commercials today in Israel is not big at all.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that, and I can tell you from our perspective, working with Israeli television, once upon a time, if you look at our streaming site, for instance, we have there some older Israeli TV shows. Once upon a time, they were happy to get a small American streaming site to play their shows. Now, every show that comes out in Israel, because they are hoping to be the next Dissel or Fauda, and they want Netflix or HBO or somebody to buy it and produce their next season, they are holding on to these rights and holding on to these TV shows so tightly. It's definitely their number one goal in all of it. They know where the bottom line, where the money's going to be coming from, and they're really not sharing these as internationally as possible. They're keeping them as the possibility of this can be something that has some value that we want to try to sell to the international market for its format. And they're all being very careful and holding on quite tightly.
Yeah. I can add that all of the Israeli platforms, broadcasters, and they all have their own production, kind of inner production companies and international not companies, but international departments that from the beginning they are starting the process towards
It's so true. Sometimes you make a series in Israel, and before the actors even see the outcome of the series or the directors, the marketing department, the international marketing department, have already seen the series, and they tell, listen, this is something we can work with. This is something we cannot work with. Invest in it. Do not invest in it. And it can bury a series before it comes out.
Yeah, and I can also add that we don't have enough viewers in Israel
it's a
for
very
the televisions. So they have no choice. Every few years there's a big crisis with the. It was Channel 10 who was always falling apart.
Yeah, Channel 10 was dying for like 4 or 5 years, and now he's dead completely.
Yes, and Keshet Reshet, and it was Keshet Reshet till Ad, and then they had to become to 2 channels, and it's not a stable.
It seems like, it's clear that the success of Israeli TV is not from the Israeli audience, but more from its international success.
These days.
Yes.
And yes, you're right. They all have Keshet has its international office, which is now bigger than its office in Israel, and probably brings in a lot more money. And it's and here's the thing that bothers me. I think the success of Israeli television is because it was trying to make things. It goes back to what I was saying before about Florentine. It wasn't trying to make something for the rest of the world. It was trying to make its own TV show in its own format, in its own artistic voice. The second
of a very authentic Israeli story.
Topics, yeah.
And
right.
Stories, yeah.
Completely authentic. My big example for this is, by the way, Israeli culture in a nutshell. The opening theme song, there's this great opening theme, I recommend Googling it, I'm sure it's on YouTube, of
Monica Sek.
There's this Monica Sek song, this popular Israeli band. That's the opening song of this show, Florentine. And as they're showing they're showing each character, like in a standard show, they introduce each character and give them credit. And as they're doing the credits, one of the characters I remember is squirting her chocolate milk bag into the air with the light coming through it, creating this beautiful rainbow of light. And you think about that. And does everybody here know what the chocolate milk bag is from Israel?
Don't forget, the series introduced to the Israeli audience on primetime the first gay character ever.
That was the first gay character? Wow.
What?
That was the first gay character?
The first gay character ever. well, maybe they showed in the past someone who, a little bit gay behaving, but not exactly talking about himself being gay. And here you have a gay character, which you see his relationship with his boyfriend and other men. And that was revolutionary.
Ayelet Zorer, Ayelet Zorer was discovered there.
Ayelet Zorer, yes.
If you know her. It had a great
If
cast.
you heard about Ayelet Zorer.
Really grew. The point I was trying to make was the chocolate milk bags. Anybody here ever drink chocolate milk out of a bag? Every Israeli child, every single Israeli child is required, doesn't matter how lactose intolerant they might be, every Israeli child is required to drink chocolate milk out of these bags. You squeeze it, then you blow it up actually and pop it. It's a fun, has a multi-purpose. And the use of that as something beautiful and completely internal and completely connected to that culture, to Israeli culture, is, I think, what gave Israeli TV its success. I think Israel telling its own stories internally, not trying to be something that it's not trying to sell something internationally, is what brings out the best of Israeli art.
Yeah.
Now that everybody's looking to see, what's going to be good in America, what's going to be good for Netflix. And I'll have to say, I'm going to become very unpopular at the moment. I think Fauda is a show that was made for Americans. It was made for the American viewing sensitivity.
Hostages, Fauda, Chatufim.
The Homeland.
Yeah, very American style.
Very American style.
The editing, the shooting, the writing, absolutely American.
And I think that will ultimately, where it'll hit a point, and I think eventually Israel's a small country and will not have new material to give.
You talked about Channel 1 before.
Yep.
In the beginning of Israel, there was one channel, and it was very Stalinistic. It was the authorities' horn or whatever how you want to call it, and. It was a very educative channel. They always tried to educate the public. Just like you said, the Beatles will not show here because it's not, And they tried to be very British. All the broadcast, they tried real hard to be the BBC. All right? And only in the 90s, the late 80s and the 90s, the American influence started to kick in. And then you saw that the material became very American, the sitcoms, the drama, everything became very American because the commercial TV came in and took all this experience from American TV and transferred completely television in Israel. That's the key point. Because until the 90s, the TV was very, I don't want to say socialist, but very, very deductive and gray.
I would like to add also that we cannot ignore the cinema in Israel. I mean, this is the basic for the television. The film schools in the film schools in Israel still the main studying is films, is how to and it's part of the it's part of the development of that bring the new horizons to the television, because when the Israeli cinema started to succeed in the world, the whole writing changed, the way they built it affected directly on television.
I agree completely. I think Israeli television would not be anywhere today if it wasn't for the success of Israeli cinema first.
Absolutely.
It gave birth to it. It gave birth to the filmmakers. It's interesting now. Do you find that that's where people are finding their work? Is that where most of the better... Somebody was saying to me recently that Israeli cinema is going down a little bit. Is it because all the top directors are now moving into television? That was
all over
theory.
the world. All over the world. Mm-hmm. It's a world movement. Yeah, it's a world phenomena.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that we still make this even more films for cinema are made in Israel, and yet you say this sentence because the whole habits of the viewers, of the audience has changed. So it affects on the other side, on the screen, the small screens.
So let's talk about that for a moment. So now everybody's watching, everybody has access to TV shows on their phones, everywhere they go, on their iPads, you have video on demand. Is this affecting cinema? Do you think people are less going to cinema, theater, other art forms because of the access to Israeli television?
I believe in maybe 10 years from now, people will not leave house. There will be no need, because I think you will be able to watch everything on your iPad or whatever it's going to be in 10 years. Even theater. I don't know, maybe there will be hologramic characters in your own living room. But the point
that can sell. You should patent that.
Yeah, and then we'd be unemployed. But I think this streaming revolution has two effects, which is kind of it's interesting because they're kind of parallel to each other. From one side, you won't have to leave home, so you won't go to theater or maybe to the cinema. On the other side, the vast there's so much material, because 20 years ago when you saw a TV series, you had to wait a week between 2 chapters, and today you can watch 3 series in 24 hours in a binge. So, and you finish the series, you want to see another one, and to see another one, we have to create another one. Yeah. So, in a weird way, it increases the work. It increases the market. It's making the market larger, and that's good news for us, because I don't remember any period of time before when so many TV projects were produced at the same time. Look at Netflix, for example. It's amazing and you have Hulu and Amazon and Google now, I heard.
Yeah, and Disney, and this is the golden age of television. They're saying, as far as a new format that's really now allowing, but I think, higher quality TV than ever before, and more TV than ever before. I will note that in Israel, there's actually an excellent law that will require all the different broadcasters have to make a certain amount of hours of Israeli original programming. So they're required to continue to produce Israeli shows and not just bring in all the next hits from HBO and Netflix.
Yes.
And bombard the Israeli audience with American productions. They have to keep, I forget what the percentage is, but they have to keep a certain percentage of original programming.
Yeah, though I agree about the statistics that you are talking about 10 years from now, but I don't think so. I want to believe, and I believe that people want to learn new things, and even though life become more comfortable, inside the house, and we are curious creatures. So, they said that the cinema will disappear when the video arrived, something like that, and it never happened.
They said theater will die when cinema went out, and.
New formats are jumping, new platforms, even like the 3D VR, virtual reality gamings. Yes, it's not theater, but there are new horizons to discover in many different areas.
There is a lot more interactive stuff going on that
but
can be the next revolution.
When you talked about this original material which they have to produce, they outsmart this law sometimes, because they produce an original Israeli reality show or 50 minutes of documentary. some made-up documentary about some made-up guy, and they say this is an original, production. And the law, who wrote the law, meant like series like Fauda, like Florentine, yes. And I think now there's a new amendment to the law that forced them to make TV series for with chapters and everything. The law is much more clear now because they used to go around it.
And by the way, those shows, the reality TV in Israel is huge. Huge. I mean, I follow and sometimes it's actually American formats, like American Idol or whatever.
It's always called. American formats,
right? Well, there's some original Israeli formats that then sell internationally too. Yeah. I've heard of those, but a lot of American formats. Big Brother seems to be.
Yeah. I think it's
the largest culture. Like here, I don't know. I don't follow it as closely, but in Israel, the Big Brother. If you're on Big Brother, you're the biggest celebrity in Israel.
Big Brother is Endemol. It's a Dutch company. They invented the format, and it became big in London. That was the first place it really, caught on, and in Israel it became. It was insanity. In the first years, it was like, 40-50% ratings, something crazy. It's like the World Cup final in Israel. The Mondial is something like 40-50%
in Israel
in rating. It was phenomenal. It was crazy. But I think it's now. I think it's dying now.
The reality phenomenon in general is are we finally going to see the end of this?
Yes, but it depends on the twisted mind that will create a new crazy.
What do you think about now this new Keshet project, 2023? I think it's called
2020. I didn't see it.
What is it?
They invested something like I don't know what, $3 million, $4 million in Israeli terms. This is huge. It's like I don't know what the Eurovision production costed something like this, and it failed so gloriously.
What was the show? What was it?
They built a city. They took the idea of Big Brother, and they made it more capitalistic, more economic. They gave it an economic angle, which you have to calculate your budget as long as you stay in this city. It's like Big Brother with money, and like Monopoly, Big Brother Monopoly, something like that. And it failed. Wow, that was tragic, And they lost like $3 or $4 million. And now there's like discussions if to go to a second season or not. And wow! And I think this is the first sign. I don't know. I'm not a prophet, but I think it's the first sign of that tells us that the Israeli public are a little bit fed up with this reality thing. I think so.
I'm on board with that. I want to take a moment to actually take some questions, comments, thoughts from the audience and make you a part of this conversation as well. Thank you guys, by the way, so much for all of your input. And I see a lot of hands up.
I'm just wondering, as an Israeli actor, Israeli producer, television producer, what are you working on now?
Well, me, we have a few features on board. Actually, I can say that me in particular, I'm running a special production company that produce first features of graduates of the Tel Aviv University. So we produce first features, only first features, and only first documentaries. So we have, few of that.
I released a mini-series now at Khan channel in Israel, which is, by the way, a new player in the market, an old new player in the market, because it used to be Channel 1. And now it's like the Israeli PBS. It looks very promising. This channel is doing really nice things, and is funded by the Israeli government, which creates a lot of political tension, obviously. And there's a constant fight between the government and this channel because the government used to, they used that we tell you what to broadcast and you do it. And these guys now are very independent. They're trying to be like PBS, and there's a lot of tension there. But anyhow, it's a mini-series about the Eurovision, about young gay Muslim singer from Paris, which is very funny because
it's a comedy.
It's a comedy, but it's funny because when the guys wrote this, they didn't know what's going to happen. I mean, they wrote this story about this young gay Muslim who wins the Daesh, ISIS, fixing the Qdam Eurovision. How do you say it?
The pre-Eurovision. Everybody here know what the Eurovision is in Israel?
You heard about Eurovision? You know this about contests? Ridiculous thing? You heard about it? Anybody?
It's a huge European song competition that has come. I don't know if it's even still a song competition, but a pop event that takes over Israel every year for a couple of weeks as they lead up to the finals. And last year, Israel won, and the winning country gets to host it that next year. So this past year, Israel hosted it, and it was by far one of the biggest
actually, it was very
Israel
big in Israel. Yeah, it was. Everybody was really excited that Israel won. And everything. So they write this story about this young Muslim, the ISIS fixing the pre-Eurovision in France, and he wins it, and they force him to come to Israel with another ISIS member who, an imposter. Yeah, he's pretending to be his boyfriend, and they order him to make a terrorist attack in the Israeli Eurovision, and we as an Mossad agents has to follow him and to catch him, and we are like the worst Mossad crew ever, and it's funny, it's nice, it's like and 2 weeks after we finished shooting, we hear that the winner of the actual pre-Eurovision is a gay Muslim. Yes, which had very difficult story. He was thrown out of his house when he was 12 because he was gay, just like our story. And when the French heard about it, they wanted to cancel the Eurovision in Israel. Now, the French has a lot of power in the Eurovision because they are one of the 4 countries that always participate in the Eurovision and fund it. So they said, if you're going to broadcast it before the Eurovision, not only we're not going to show in the Eurovision, we're going to cancel it in Israel. So we had to broadcast it after the Eurovision. But it was great success, and it was bought by many, many countries, and many gay festivals in the world wants this series now. And the other thing that's going to come out in Toronto, and we talked about it, is a new movie by Carole Zabar that's called Incitement, about the Rabin murder.
You're not allowed to tell people it's coming out in Toronto.
It's coming in Toronto.
Shh. Toronto hasn't announced their program yet.
Oh, sorry. It's not. All right. Well, if we're going to get to Venice, we're going to go out in Venice.
Cut the tape.
Yeah, but it's going to be in Venice or Toronto, one of the two. Trying to save the
Next question.
Try to, yeah. Please, questions.
What's that show called?
It's a movie. The show called 12 Points. Which is 12 points in French. 12 points is like the highest score in the Eurovision. It's called 12 Points.
Yeah, we're right here.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I have a question. I just finished watching the series Yuda, which is about an Israeli vampire, and I was wondering, first of all, I was impressed there are 5 languages in the series. I was wondering what the buzz was about the series in Israel, because I just accidentally found it. I'm wondering if other people have heard about it. I mean, it's quite impressive.
It's funny that you say it, because I saw 2 chapters of it on the plane to New York from Tel Aviv. That's the first time I saw it. I was bored at the flight, and I saw 2 chapters. I liked it a lot. I think production-wise, there's a lot of things there that never been done in Israel, production-wise, and it looks real good. Looks well done, right? And that's part of the new Israeli standards, and that's what we're proud of. And the director of this series is Meni Yaish, who made 2 incredible Israeli films, which I recommend all of you to watch. He's the director of this series, and he did The Bouncer with Maurice Cohen.
We screened it here a couple of years ago at our festival.
A great movie, and Maurice is a great friend of mine, and I love him, and he's a great actor. And the other one called Amashgichim. I don't know how to say it in.
I'm trying to remember what its American title was. An English title. It wasn't.
Two
wasn't a direct
beautiful
translation.
movies, and every if you're Jewish or not Jewish, of course, if you're Jewish, you will understand it better. I really recommend about those movies. If you like the series, watch the movies.
He takes a little bit of the Guy Ritchie style of directing and likes a little bit of violence in there.
The first good, really good action director in Israel, I think. Not to offend anyone else, but what he's doing in action is brilliant.
But there's an example, by the way, of a TV. They're all going to television. Every Israeli director, every director I speak to, what are you doing next? Avi Nesher, who was here yesterday, what are you doing next? Well, I have a TV show that I'm producing. Joseph Cedar.
Yaron too. Yaron Zilberman, the director of Excitement, is doing...
all Israeli directors are making TV now. Yes. That used to be something that you didn't do. You didn't do that crossover. We have a question on top.
So you mentioned In Treatment, and also Prisoners of War was the English title for the Israeli show that I think Homeland was translated from. I'm a psychiatrist, so I've actually used both of them, either being used in lectures where we were taught. In Treatment was so sophisticated, and Prisoners of War I've used in teaching about post-traumatic stress disorder, and specifically about people who have been imprisoned as a prisoner of war. And I'm struck by in my experience, I would never see something like that in America. It just wouldn't be made in that way. It was much, much more sophisticated psychologically, and I was interested, is that the Israeli sensibility? Was this made for intellectuals in Israel, or is the culture different? How come these amazing shows came from Israel?
Well, it's first of all, I thank you in behalf of the creators, Carole Levi, which is amazing guy and creator. I think it's not by chance that you talk about those specific two shows, because we have what we call in Israel suga ilit. I don't know how to translate it. It's
upper, no?
It's like the
genre.
An upper genre or an elite genre. The TV channels are committed to give some percent of their budget to a very, very special and sophisticated project, not just a sitcom or a reality show or an action series. They have this 10-12% that originally designated for these kind of projects. And I think you can find it in the United States too. I don't know I'm watching Chernobyl now. I don't know if you heard about it, or HBO. Yeah. And I love it. I think if you're going to watch Chernobyl, you will enjoy as much as you enjoyed In Treatment.
I will say that both of these, I think it's going to be harder to find these now, again, because Israel's looking to sell internationally, and an experimental show like In Treatment, I mean, that's groundbreaking. It was not something that you do to necessarily make money or to sell internationally. Who knew that this would happen? Carole Levi, the creator, who now his show here is The Affair, which I think is a little less sophisticated. He had another Israeli TV show that was a mini-series. We actually have it on our streaming site about it's a fake documentary. He makes it look like a documentary as if it's all found footage from old film reels, as he's going and interviewing as a child. His character, Carole Levi as a child, is interviewing all these Israeli intellectuals who are dealing also with psychological trauma of some level. It is the most artistic show I have ever seen on. I mean, it's so groundbreaking. You're watching this documentary that turns out 100% of it is fake. None of it actually exists, and it's all completely recreated. And that's something that you don't make for international remakes. You make it because you get some funding to do this.
Considering Chagai, it's important to say that his exceptional even I think he's a world-class creator. He's now doing something for HBO.
Yeah,
and
that's the one that Joseph Cedars directed.
Yes, exactly. And he's just an exceptional creator. I think he would get to the same results if he worked in France or the United States or Bhutan. I don't know where. It's just the person himself. He's very unique.
Yeah.
We have a question up here.
Hi. So you mentioned that Shtisel, Hostages and Fauda was made for sort of an American audience with American sensibilities in mind.
No.
I didn't mention Shtisel on that list.
Shtisel is different, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to
Shtisel
say, because
stands out a little
Shtisel
bit
to me
more.
seemed pretty unique. But I guess the broad question is what do you think about the two shows that you mentioned? What aspects make it more American, and what are the sort of the Israeli qualities that are sort of uniquely Israeli?
What? I didn't understand the question.
What makes these shows more American? I mean, first of all, stylistically, as far as for me, I'll answer. Maybe you guys will understand it more. And for me, stylistically, there's that level of it. I mean, there's those moments in Fauda where he's standing and practicing with his gun in front of a mirror or something like that, which is just like, him trying to be Bruce Willis as much as possible. And so there's something in the editing style, the storytelling style, as far as trying to grab your attention. In both of those shows, people are always making the worst decisions at that. No, don't go into the house. Why would you go into the house now? Get out. I mean, the whole second season, you're just saying, it's not to ruin anything, no spoilers. You're saying, get out of there as quickly as possible. Why are you breaking the rule that they told you specifically? And it's a very forced drama, I would say. And I think that exists in both of those shows. And I wouldn't say that either of those shows actually play on a realistic level of Israeli society or of any society. I think it's all very much a level of fiction that plays more into American style of TV shows.
And it's portrayed even by simple technical things, like the editing, the shooting, the lighting, the rhythmus, the rhythm. It's
Action.
Yes, and I love it.
And every episode with that cliffhanger, perfectly. Let's bring in this whole new twist. It's really not meant. I wouldn't say that In Treatment, for instance, does that. I left Shtisel off that list specifically. I think Shtisel actually stands out in a different way and is really, I think, its own culture and its own design and doesn't follow as much of a format. Though we had here once the producer of Shtisel, and we asked him what inspired the show, and he said The Sopranos.
Yeah.
And it's something that's fascinating to think about how those two formats kind of play with each other.
Oh, wow. It's funny. Today I drive the car from Manhattan to Jersey through the turnpike, and
all you can hear is the opening song of
Alabama
Sopranos.
3, yeah, and you see the actual this route which she drives, which James Gandolfini drives, every day to work or from the city and to work, and I almost cried, seriously. I mean, like, people are driving this way every day, from Jersey to Manhattan, from Manhattan to Jersey, but this show, it's so deep with me. It's like, I don't know, it's like War and Peace to me, Tolstoy's. It's like the Bible of TV. Yeah. It is so identified with me. I mean, as a TV lover, I shivered because it's the first time I was in this situation in a car, in an SUV, and it was almost mystic, it was almost like a religious experience was for me. You guys probably, you do it, for you it's like to me to go down to Dizengoff Street and walk around, but that's the power of Sopranos to me, I will never feel the same with any other TV show. Maybe if I'll go to Baltimore and the project
Little
there with
Homicide.
The Wire.
But I can answer to you that Shtisel and also In Treatment, these two examples, I think that what is special in these series that they're really in the small details, in the nuances, and it comes from a deep understanding the situation, the characters, and I don't think it's an Israeli thing. Of course, Shtisel is it's a Jewish. It's about the ultra Orthodox society. So it's. But it's just the filmmakers that succeeded to touch it in a very deep way. You know, you can find it in the British and in Americans and Sweden. I don't know, Danish.
And I think there's another thing. First of all, I apologize. I had to share the story before because I was so moved. I think there's another thing in Shtisel because you get the chance, even if that most of us are Jews, and we know the Orthodox Jews. Well, I grew up in Bnei Brak. I grew up with those guys. You never know what's going on in their communities behind curtains, and this show gave you the opportunity to be, I don't know, just to peep in, you know, and to see what's going on there inside this close community. And the creator, of course, he was an Orthodox Jew.
I think that's a crucial element of it is actually having that authenticity. It's having that internal perspective. Many times, there are many Israeli films and possibly TV shows too that were made from an outside perspective about the Hasidic or Orthodox community.
Exactly.
And it's you feel it. You feel there. You know, the way they kiss the mezuzah is not happening the same way as the way everything happens on Shtisel, which is so authentic. And I think that allows it to be something. Because of that, it becomes so much more human.
Yes.
That's what allows it to sell universally.
For example, if you saw the show, I was struck by the scene when he.
Shtisel?
Yeah, Shtisel. When he has this little flirt with this Mizrahi woman.
Neighbor.
What's her name? Batya. She's not Ashkenazi. She's Sephardic Jewish widow. How do you call her? Elisheva, right. And this is like, and what we know from the outside is now the Ashkenazim, that goes with Ashkenazi women, and the Sephardim is with the Sephardim women, and there's no flirting and nothing. And all of a sudden we see this little moment when they sit there and they're like flirting, and you see that he loves her, but he cannot marry her. He cannot go out with her. So he sits there and he ate her couscous. I don't know what she made there.
Not Elisheva.
Elisheva. Yes, this old widow.
Oh, okay.
Old. She's 50. Yeah. I'll be 50 in 5 years old. And so she's sitting there, and they have this moment when they share this dish, and that's their date. That's their like I don't know, flirt, stoots, you know, romance, whatever you call it. And this is beautiful. It's so tender,
it's a beautiful,
you know,
it's a beautiful, poetic, so specific moment that most people are not even getting the details of it. Most people who watch the show on Netflix, but of course it works, and it's what makes it work. That's poetry.
You see humans. Human beings, not you know, black characters walking with this. And
we have time. Ooh, there's a lot of questions. We have time for, I think, only one more.
So thank you for telling us how Israeli television reflects Israeli culture. I wonder if the opposite is true. In other words, if it's become so popular, are there any ways in which Israeli television is affecting Israeli society?
Wow.
Is life mimicking art?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Let's take Fauda, for example. I don't want to talk about the bad influence of TV. This is, you know, everybody discussed this for many times, and you know, it's a bit boring. But I tell you about Fauda. I remember when the series came out, the first season, everybody said, "Oh, okay, another season when the Israeli heroes, you know, killed the Arab bad guys, and then blah blah blah." And the opposite happened. The series exposed the human side of the Palestinian people And all of a sudden, Israelis understood in a way that there is a reason why this guy takes this weapon and want to make this, I don't know, terror attack or whatever. They suddenly, they don't agree. You don't have to agree with them. But all of a sudden, there was a balance in the, I would say, in the exposure of the situation. All of a sudden, you saw a young Palestinian girl that's getting married with her lover, and her uncle. She doesn't know it. She doesn't know it. Her uncle is like the head of this Palestinian terror group, and this unit of Israeli undercover soldiers coming in and killing him in the wedding, and her groom get killed by accident, and from this day, she joins the, she want to revenge. So when it's the first time that an Israeli TV series, I don't justify it and don't get me wrong, yeah, but it's the first time that Israeli TV series tells the story of the other side. Why a woman, 20 years old, 21 years old, picks up a weapon and goes to make a terror attack. And from that point, it was revolutionary. And I remember the comments, of the comments of the talk, the guys that called it, they wrote. I was amazed. I didn't believe what I'm reading. All of a sudden, people in Israel said, "Well, they killed her groom." So
yeah,
that was amazing.
I think that television films reflect reality. But there's an influence when you have the chance to watch content that you don't see or don't read about. So it opens your mind, and it makes a change. It makes a change for sure. Not only in culture, also behavior, knowing the others. So yeah.
By the way, I guarantee you that the most of secular Israelis that usually on everyday life, like to bash the Orthodox community. They don't go to the army, they just take our money and blah, blah, blah. When they saw shtisel, and when they see stuff like shtisel, they get more, how do you say, forgiving. Okay, forgiving, mechilim. Yes, and there's. I think I would like to see you asked about the effect. I think there's a very positive effect now for Israeli TV on the Israeli society.
Even the audience from the ultra-Orthodox society who don't have any computers and internet, they found their ways to watch this amazing series.
All the Hasidic Jews in the flight to New York, almost all of them watched Shtisel.
You caught them.
Seriously.
Don't let their rabbi catch them watching on
Shtisel
the flight.
and Shababnikim.
Shababnikim. That's another one that about the kind of the black hat community in Israel. I will add to that 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 it hasn't affected in the slightest the voting patterns in Israel. Israeli television is mostly created, I'd say, by left from center, maybe some center, and clearly there hasn't been enough impact of that since mostly right-wing parties were elected in this last election. Next up in this space is actually, we get into this topic a little bit more. We're showing the show Autonomies, which is about a futuristic Israel where Jerusalem is one capital and Tel Aviv is another capital, one being religious, the other being secular, with a wall dividing these two countries, a fiction that's very quickly becoming a reality in Israel. And it's a fantastic show. So that will be starting at 12:30 here in this room. I want to thank